Hey guys, Matt's back for episode 3 of the floppy drive modification project. I almost forgot what I was saying. So, just now, I ordered all the stuff. I actually had to switch this one out for one that would come within the next day, which is nice. Very nice. So, we've got that out of the way. And today we're going to talk about this SSD. Now, I actually have an SSD. It's not this one that we're looking at right now, but it is the same size. All SSDs are roughly the same size, a little bit thicker, thinner here and there, but that's besides the point. Oh, sorry, I just dropped a screw. So we're gonna take a look at this. I'm gonna take a look at a floppy disk and just kind of talk about how we're gonna fit one into the other. So, I'm going to switch you over now using my very limited editing skills to my video. All right, that should be good. Let's hope I can synchronize this audio when we're done. Okay. So, basically, right here, we've got an SSD, pretty standard. Let's see, this thing is 100 millimeters in length and about 70-ish millimeters in width. And a standard floppy drive, you can't see, okay, is about 93 millimeters by 90 millimeters. So we're gonna have to do some stuff when we take it apart. We take one of these, but I'm not gonna take this one apart because this is actually important to me. This has data on it that I would prefer not to lose. But regardless of that, we've got this SSD here. This one happens to be 480. The one I'm buying is only 120, so not exactly the world's largest SSD, but it's certainly larger than any of these floppy disks, which are, as I mentioned in the last one, about 1.44 megabytes, which is almost nothing in this day and age. Sorry, hang on, I just accidentally popped the faceplate off of this thing. And I think we're going to use this floppy disk right here. Sorry, I couldn't really see that. This floppy disk right here is the one I think we're going to use because it's clear, and when it's clear you'll be able to see how all the little bits work inside it. So let's see if we can take this apart right now. I have taken one of these apart before. It was not on camera, but all I did was remove this and kind of coax the spring out. I actually lost the spring, and this was metal, but I lost the spring, that's why I couldn't put it back together. And then just kind of pop this bad boy open at the seams here. Can you see what I'm doing? Yeah. So you just kind of gotta pop it open, because it's not like there's any screws or anything, but I am gonna grab this screwdriver here with a flathead bit, just so I can kind of pry it open a little bit easier, because I want to do my best to not damage the casing as best I can. Let's see. You do just kind of have to pull it apart. There's not really a graceful, quote-unquote, way to do it. Because, yeah, it'll sound like I'm breaking stuff, but it's probably fine. It just kind of pops apart. Like that corner popped up. Now this corner is popping up. Come on. Alright, I'll get back to that one. So then I'll pop. Can you see what I'm doing? This side up And here is the actual floppy disk. I'll set that aside for now. If I actually wanted to save that, I wouldn't have touched it, but I don't really care about it. Ow. I'll just stab myself in the hand with a screwdriver. I'm good, it's fine. Everything's fine. Nothing to worry about. Okay. So it looks like this corner was a little bit stubborn and kind of broke in a way I didn't want it to, but that's still fine. It'll still work. So we can take a look here at the anatomy of a floppy disk. So you've got the actual disk, which is now probably ruined because I've touched it and there's a little scratch on it, and it's very delicate. It's like, think of it like if you know what a tape is, like a tape deck, it's like a circular one of those. So I guess it wouldn't be broken, it would just be pretty bad in terms of playback. There's actually not a lot of scratches on it, considering I just set it down on this sharp little spring. But here's the actual thing that records information. There's no way that I can actually make this of higher capacity, because you can only have so much capacity in like a tape, because it has a limited number of little divots, magnetic divots you can have in it. So that's as far as you can go with this. It's pretty much as high capacity as it can be. And then these two bits are the actual body of it, as you saw. It's very thin. It's only like, let me grab a intact floppy drive, not flash drive. It's only like 3 millimeters thick-ish. So when we take apart the SSD, we're gonna have to hope the actual internals are thinner than that. If they aren't, I might be able to work with it. If not, then we're gonna have to resort to using some micro SD cards, which is also fine. There's no issue in that. But coming back over to here, we've got, let's talk about this side first. Got a little black dot there, and this little cloth here. This is actually to cover up the disc. If you noticed, this was kind of pressed against it like that, so you can only see the disc right there. That's to protect it from it being scratched on the hard plastic insides of the floppy disk itself. All floppy disks have this. This one just happens to be clear, so you can actually see it. And I'm just going to peel it off because we don't need that for our modification. I'll toss that aside and do the same with this one. Now, with this one, you may know, or with this side, and if I grab another floppy drive here in just a moment, you'll also notice, like with this, you've got back here this little sort of slider thing. Can you see that? This little slider thing that you can slide in and out to cover up or open up that little hole. And it fell. Where'd it go? There it is. Found it. Nope, everything's fine. Everything's fine. You can use it to cover up or open up this little hole here that goes straight through the, it's hard to tell with this one, but it goes straight through the disc. So if I close that, now there's not a hole over there anymore. And what that's for is read-write protection. So if you've got, like, let's say if I just grab one of these floppy drives here, floppy disks here, okay, let's say I've got this thing here, right? This is a WinSys tutorial. So let's say you've got one of these and you don't want anyone to overwrite what's on it because it's important. You just have to take this little notch here and close it. That way, when it goes through the reader here, when it goes through, it will recognize that that you can't write to this, and so it won't. I actually still have the circuit board, and So if you imagine that this thing is inside here, like this, give or take, what happens is, when I take this with the notch closed, as you can see, it goes in just like this, with these little button things here that they're very small, but they do actuate. They push down. Focus. Okay. So this comes in. Let's see if I can get a good angle of this. It's very difficult to see. Whether this comes in like this, presses those down, as you can see. So those get pressed down, and then it stops right about here, where this one here is pressed up. Or this one here is not pressed, but this one here is pressed. And because this last one, this one on the very end here, is pressed down, then the floppy drive or the reader knows not to write to it. So as you can see, this is a really bad angle and there's not good lighting, but as you can see, all three of them or two of them are pressed down. Well, this one is not. Now, if I open that up, you see only one of them is pressed down and the other two are up. So you can kind of see that one is up and this one is up. So that's what that little notch is for. I don't think we're going to be able to implement that into this modification because that would require quite a bit of coding that is far above my head, like by a lot. I would not even begin to know how to do that. But regardless of that, it should work. That's not important. Go away. So by the looks of things, it's just very, very thin little ridges here that we can certainly take a file to, or just like take a little knife to and scrape away. This is kind of how it will be. I'm hoping that the internal circuitry will be a lot smaller inside here than it will be IRL, or than it is as it is now. But if we do it like this, then we can have the SATA power and SATA data connector. Oh, you can't see that. The SATA power and SATA data connector kind of sticking out the side, so that when we put it in, it'll go kind of like that, and it can clip into something that's over here. But now I'm going to switch you back over to the computer so we can talk a bit more over there. So basically, the plan is to take the SSD we're looking at right now. We're going to take that sucker apart, and then we are going to try and put it into the floppy little thing that I showed you earlier. And earlier, I mean like 10 seconds ago. I'm going to try and put it in that. If it's too thick, then what we'll do is we'll just get a normal... I have a bunch of, normal SSD, or normal, like, SD card readers. I've got a bunch of those, so that's not a problem. We don't need to order any of those. But if, like, the SSD doesn't fit, then we'll put one of those inside the floppy disk and go from there. And while we're doing that, we'll do the other thing with the switching it so that it's got just a pass-through of the SATA USB. It's the USB floppy drive to SATA. So that should be fine. And that's about all. Thank you so much for watching and following me. And I will see you all in the next one. You should probably go watch the other two if you haven't. I don't know how you would have found this one if you didn't. But watch the other two episodes. And that's about all. Thanks for watching.